The Workforce Development and Hiring Series webinar. We are so excited to share information about how the agency is expanding capacity to grow workforce development partnerships and increase hiring through the efforts of the National Recruitment and Hiring Team. Today, USDA released their DEIA strategic plan for 2022 through 2026. At the core of this DEIA strategic plan are 6 goals that are designed to help the agency, all of USDA, grow a culture of high performance and inclusion across the agencies. Those 6 goals are focused on culture, and that is to build a culture that drives trust, belonging, transparency, accountability, and employee empathy. Workforce is the second, and it is to achieve a workforce representative of Americans that inspires development of innovative ideas and best practices. The third goal is work environment, and that is to foster a workplace environment that is harassment-free, physically, mentally, and emotionally safe, where all employees can thrive. The fourth is governance, and that is to establish leadership and governance structures to support long-term and sustainable DEIA efforts. The fifth is accountability, designed to promote empowerment, responsibility, and accountability for DEIA through developing the workforce. And the sixth is commitment, that we all demonstrate a commitment to a diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible USDA through accountability, data collection, analysis, and effective policy making. The timing of today's webinar couldn't be better, as it will touch on a few things that support USDA's DEIA strategic plan. There are lots of folks involved in this work in the field and here at the WO. The team that will be sharing content today are all highly engaged in helping us build out this work. Tina Terrell is serving in a new role as Associate Deputy Chief in Business Operations to help the agency expand recruitment and outreach for hiring. Berlinda Baca serves as the Branch Chief for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Civil Rights, and is co-leading Equity Action Item number 3, which we will discuss more. And I am currently serving as the Acting Director of the Workforce Development Partnership Service Hub. And then Sylvia Staples is the Resource Assistance Program Manager. And many of you already know her because of the work she's been doing with RAs. So before we get started, please know that the webinar will be recorded, is being recorded, and potentially repeated if there is sufficient interest. Feel free to drop questions or comments in the chat box during the presentation, but we plan to reserve time for discussion. So let's get started. Next slide, please. So the objectives for this webinar are to share expectations about how we propose to develop a future workforce more intentionally and build our capacity to get more work done, given the infusion of resources to address infrastructure and climate change. We also want to focus on how we can remove barriers to success. We want to hear from you because this is a learning journey for all of us. We understand that we can only achieve agency goals and develop the next generation of conservation stewards if we focus on continuous improvement and provide space for input, cooperation, and collaboration across all deputy areas and at all levels of the agency. Next slide, please. So I am super curious about your knowledge of workforce development partnerships. Could you please take a moment to respond to this poll? And I'm hopeful the results will show up as you click a response. So I'll pause for just a moment to give you a chance to make your selections. Wow. So far, it looks like the majority of you have a little bit of experience with workforce development partnerships. That's good to know. And many of you have moderate experience. And it's nice to see, nearly 15% have a lot. That's good news. So that is at least provides us with a framework for the conversation that we'll have today. And I really look forward to hearing from all of you, regardless of your level of knowledge. I'm assuming the poll will stay open as people, or will it close? But nevertheless, I will proceed. So next slide, please. So the work of the Workforce Development Partnership Service Hub, is how did we get here? The first thing that happened was that the USDA responded to the administration's charge, President Biden's charge, to develop an equity action plan that all of the federal agencies were directed to do. The Forest Service launched into this effort last year in 2021. And one of the 10 action items that evolved out of this planning effort were to achieve a representative, inclusive, and thriving forest workforce. That is the equity plan that Berlinda Baca and myself have been leading out on. The primary objectives of the equity action number 3 are to develop and implement data-driven, agency-wide workforce strategy focused on entry-level and mid-career level positions. One of the other objectives include consolidating all national level third-party internship programs and merging our third-party internship programs, including the Resource Assistance Program, into a single new students and emerging professionals organization within the Workforce Development Partnership structure. Objectives also include enhancing our relationships with current partners and developing new sustainable partnerships with affinity groups, professional student organizations, and minority serving institutions. Another is to emphasize accountability through reporting and annual performance objectives. We intend to expand training and technical assistance to attract applicants from underrepresented populations and marginalized communities, and serve Forest Service units and staffs more efficiently and intentionally around how to and grow and expand our workforce development training capacity through partnerships. And it goes without saying that there is a lot of emphasis on increasing tribal engagement, and there are a number of programs that will be coming online this year in fiscal FY23 that are going to help us do that, as well as significant efforts that are ongoing with the Office of Tribal Relations related to their a strategic planning effort that is ongoing, and other efforts to be more engaged in consultation with tribal communities and organizations. And finally, we want to extend access to direct hire authority to many of our partnerships, including Job Corps and potentially other authorities that currently offer non-competitive hiring eligibilities. Next slide, please. So one of the activities that we initiated in response to the equity planning effort, and then the emphasis on, as well as another executive order that was issued by the administration regarding civilian climate corps priorities. And that is, how do we scale up climate resilience, and how do we do that to address DEIA priorities, and provide more capacity to federal agencies, and in our instances, the land management agencies, to get work done. In partnership with the Core Network, we developed a survey that was disseminated by the Core Network in early FY22. There were over 143 respondents who represented over 10,000 crew members and interns in their programs. 89% of them are currently working with federal agencies, and 86% of those members that they engage perform climate resilience work, which is quite broad and includes climate adaptation as well as climate mitigation priorities that our partners have been engaged with over many years. 45% indicated a capacity to increase engagement by 100% in 36 months. And we also learned a lot about the types of services that our partners are offering their constituents. And inclusive amongst those certifications were partners, 20% of our partners indicated an ability to field crews and interns to support NEPA. This is just a very, very basic snapshot of much of what we learned from our partners and the respondents. But I think what's really interesting is that of those 143 respondents, about 18% were organizations that had never worked with us, but expressed an interest in being partners with us. We also learned that there was a great deal of interest from some of our urban cores and urban NGOs and how they could partner with us on urban and community forestry project work that would allow members to serve on projects in their own backyards, and actually really emphasize the importance of engaging marginalized communities who are most impacted by climate change to make a difference where they live. On this slide, and I believe that if someone would drop this link into the chat box, is a story map that presents some of the data that we learned, and also will provide you with a map that shows how the work, how the respondents, where they serve, the types of deployments, whether they're crews or interns, where those deployments are. And it's really quite revealing to see which areas and regions of the country have really strong and robust core engagement, and those where we have some work to do. And finally, in addition to the capacity to deploy teams and fields to support NEPA work, there was a lot of information around the kinds of career and professional development that our partners offered, and it is quite extensive. So I encourage you to take a look at that link once it's shared. Next slide, please. So these efforts, the Equity Action Plan, the Organizational Capacity Survey, and lots of outreach to senior leaders and others helped inform a proposal to establish a Workforce Development Partnership Service Hub. Previously, much of this work was organized in either civil rights, and the majority was organized under the Office of Recreation, Heritage, and Volunteer Resources. But what we found was that there was a need to increase our efforts to more directly target how we can work with our field, our partners, and others to serve all of these programs in a much more integrated way. We were approved to establish this service hub in May, and it was approved to be established under the Office of the National Partnerships Office. We felt that was the right place for it because this is all about partnerships. Every single one of these programs that you'll see listed here are students, IRAP, and emerging professionals partnerships, the 21 CSC Public Lands Corps, and our newly established Indian Youth Service Corps, which will come online in FY23, as well as about 50% of all of our Youth Conservation Corps engagement is through partnerships. And it made sense to to build on the great work that the National Partnership Office has been doing in recent years to build capacity by establishing this service hub within that partnership office. The Job Corps, although is not a part of the service hub in NPO, it will continue to be organized under the business Office of Business Operations. It is very much a partner with us on delivering this work. We are proposing to bring in ad hoc strike teams to help us solve, challenges that we're having related to the work that we're trying to do with our partners and in the field. And we'll be working with the business administration support team to help us increase our capacity to deliver on agreement instruments that are going to be helpful to you all, as well as other types of business operation activities that will help us streamline this work. Next slide, please. So what are the programs? And I talked a little bit about this already, but of course, all of our 21st century Conservation Service Corps programs, which include workforce development, training, and education partnerships for individuals ages 16 to 30 and veterans up to 35, and crews or internships. Most of them are focused on natural resources, land, and water conservation and management priorities. 21 CSC is not just a Forest Service initiative, but it is an initiative that our land management sister agencies are also very heavily engaged with, including NOAA and all of the DOI bureaus. Projects are delivered through partnerships with non-governmental organizations. And for some of those projects, upon the successful completion of a qualifying public lands corps project and a minimum of 6,400 hours, 640 hours, they are eligible for a special non-competitive hiring eligibility. We'll be offering a webinar next month that will delve into the Public Lands Corps Authority programs. Many of you have heard about the Indian Youth Service Corps, which was authorized as part of the DINGO Act and the Public Lands Corps Act in 2019. And the intent of the Indian Youth Service Corps program is to expand opportunities for tribes to participate in Public Lands Corps and Resource Assistance Program activities and provide a direct benefit to members of federally recognized Indian tribes or Alaskan Native corporations. The IYSC program activities can occur on not only national forest lands and other public lands, but Indian lands as well. And all of us, we're all familiar with the Youth Conservation Corps, our legacy program. It's been around since 1971. And many of our leaders started with the Youth Conservation Corps, getting my acronyms mixed up. Our intent is to expand this program significantly and bring it back to the level of performance that in the early years of this program. In recent years, we've seen about an average of 1,000 participants per year, and during the pandemic, that dropped down even further. We are excited about the possibility of expanding the Youth Conservation Corps to our urban and community forestry partners, because that is the one authority that allows us to deploy crews and interns on state and local municipality public lands. And we're very excited about that opportunity. And of course, everyone, is really familiar with the Resource Assistance Program. And there's lots of good news about the results that are coming out of that. But as you all know, it is a rigorous, immersive work and learning experience for emerging professionals interested in conservation and/or natural and cultural resources, environmental management, research and development, and other career opportunities. What is unique about this authority is that it allows us to directly target minority serving higher institutions of higher education. And we have developed it to emphasize collaboration with pre-selected partners, of which many of you are already familiar with. But you'll be learning more about the Resource Assistance Program briefly today, as well as in 2 upcoming webinars that next month in October and November. And then, of course, we have our special program, the Job Corps Civilian Conservation Centers, and I'm sure I messed that up, and forgive me. But as you all know, those are residential education and career training programs for qualifying young people ages 16 to 24. They receive training and certification with increasing emphasis on forestry and other natural resources careers. And they are able to earn a high school diploma or GED if they don't yet have that. I believe there are going to be some opportunities to learn more about the Job Corps program as well. And then finally, what's really special about this new service hub is that we're now consolidating the student internships and individual placements through that have originally resided in civil rights and maybe some other organizations of the agency with the National Forest System under this service hub. And that is going to create some new opportunities for each of you to engage with universities and other organizations who are helping us recruit candidates for future employment. And Berlinda Baca will be talking a little bit more about those programs. With that, I am going to ask Sylvia Staples to turn on her camera and just share a little bit about the Resource Assistance Program and its intent and our upcoming schedule. Sylvia?
Yes, thank you so much, Marlene. Good afternoon, everyone. Sylvia Staples here, the Resource System Program Manager. Happy to be here with you guys today. So the Resource System Program, as Marlene has already spoken about, is the agency's opportunity to engage those high-performing students from minority serving institutions that can come into the agency and work with what we call a mentor to get the on-the-job training and development and eventually become Forest Service employees through the Direct Hire Authority. The resource assistants that we bring into the agency are at all levels, from bachelor's degree levels, master's degrees, and even some have had PhDs, and they have been engaged in various positions such as hydrologists, wildlife biologists, ecologists, law enforcement admin, and the list goes on. We are now about to start recruiting for our next cohort of resource assistants. They will start February the 6th with our winter 2023 cohort. The next opportunity will be our summer 2023 cohort with a start date of June the 5th. I won't go into all of the details, but what I will say is this is your opportunity to engage a high-performing candidate and, again, to develop them into a professional. And we are engaging these resource assistants for 8 and 12-month terms. And if you're interested in learning more, please tune in on September the 29th. You can use the same link, as well as November the 3rd. We will be having a more in-depth presentation about the Resource Assistant Program, what it is, how to request an RA, how to hire an RA, how to engage an RA. And we look forward to engaging with you on that day. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to pass it over to Berlinda Baca.
Thanks, Sylvia. Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and jump into the student internship programs that have traditionally resided within the civil rights organization. So there's 5 historical programs that we've managed, and then we just brought in a 5th that I'd like to share some information about. But important to share that, all of these internship programs have been developed or are being further developed to create a robust and productive talent pipeline to address a lot of our underrepresentation, gaps in skills, and what have you. So we're really excited to be able to share what's going on with these programs in the coming fiscal year. If I could have the next slide, please. I'll go through the programs really quickly. Feel free if you have any questions to drop it in the chat box, and I'll address it while we're talking about the particular programs. USDA 1890 Scholars Program is a program that is sponsored or managed out of the Department of Agriculture. It's one of our oldest programs that we participate in. They're of full scholarship, room and board for the student. Forest Service pays the full scholarship or tuition, books and fees. And then the host university pays the students room and board. So this really is, as someone mentioned last week during the meeting, the golden ticket of the programs that we host. We've hosted over the years probably about 85 different scholars through this program. And so many of our colleagues today are products of the program or alumni. The program, as I mentioned, is managed by the Department of Agriculture, Office of Partnership and Public Engagement. They have liaisons on each of the 1890 campuses that are actively recruiting on high schools for this 1890 program. So many times, a lot of the students that we're hosting are incoming freshmen, and it's not uncommon that we would sponsor a student through their entire academic career. As far as, the unit hosting the student, the unit pays for travel to and from the duty location, as well as a stipend for housing. We ask that it be around $1,000 a summer at the minimum. They also pay the salary, of course, and then civil rights, or now the new organization, the new WDP, will be picking up the tuition reimbursement, which averages about $12,000 a year. Another commitment of the unit of the USDA 1890 program is the commitment from the unit to convert the student upon completion of the program. So this does require that the unit identify an FTE to convert the student into upon completion. Next slide. The 1994 Scholars Program, Tribal Scholars Program, is, I guess, the sister program to the 1890. This, just as it implies, is a scholars program for students that are attending one of the 30 plus 1994 tribal schools. Again, full tuition, room and board is picked up by the institution itself. Same requirements of a unit in that they pick up the cost of salary, travel, and housing in the summer, and then the WDP would pick up the cost of tuition for the students. And then again, the same requirements of a conversion upon the completion of the program into a full-time position. Next slide. So the next three programs we'll be talking about are third-party internship programs. And so in these programs, the student is actually an employee of the third-party provider, in this case, HACU, or the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities. Traditionally, HACU, Thurgood Marshall were managed by the department or another sister agency. We were successful this year in getting the department and the sister agencies to allow us to have our own agreements with HACU and Thurgood Marshall, and we're happy to report that they're all going to be PLC agreements, including the CAPAL agreement, which, as you all know, or maybe don't know, that would lead to a pathway for these students that are participating in these programs. So they're no longer just the standard 10-week internship program, but a student can opt to complete the entire 640, is it, Merlene, hours for the PLC?
Yes.
Okay. To then be able to compete internally as a Forest Service employee. So we're really, really excited about that. Fiscal 23 will be the first year that we are running students through these 3 third-party internship programs in PLC. So Haku, um, Civil Rights, or soon to be WDP, picks up the entire cost of the Haku internship. We typically will host 14 students um, through the program, and again, as I said, they recruit at one or all of the 500 plus Hispanic serving institutions nationwide. So their candidate pool, they typically get, I believe they said 5,000 candidates a year to consider. That, you know, the students they place is much smaller depending on the federal agencies that are sponsoring these students. So great opportunities with Haku. And we've had some really good we've actually had some success. Our very own Sylvia Staples is an alumni of Haku, and she was able to leverage her experience in this internship program into a pathways position that she was able to get at the SAF hiring event, I believe. So does create some really great opportunities as far as strengthening their skill sets as well as their resume. Right now, the Haku program is run we have the option to either do in person or virtual. Thurgood Marshall, if we could go to the next slide, please. Thurgood Marshall is one of the other third-party internship programs that we've partnered with for years now, traditionally through USDA, but they allowed us again to do our own agreement. They're completely thrilled to be able to participate in a PLC agreement and give their students greater opportunity for potential full-time employment. This is run very similar to Haku in that Civil Rights, or soon to be WDP, will be picking up the entire cost of the internship program. Again, the 640 hours. And then that will give these students hopefully an opportunity and a pathway to permanent employment through the use of the PLC certificate. We have had some success with Thurgood Marshall as well. I see Drag is on the call, and he had a student who leveraged his internship with the Thurgood Marshall program into an 1890 scholars position, and ultimately was hired at a Manners hiring event into a full-time position in fire. He's, you know, one of our colleagues now. So that was a great example of how some of these internship programs, which really have only been 10 weeks in length, into a full-time position. And then finally, Kapal. Kapal, we're going to give credit to the years of partnership with Kapal to Cheryl Bailey out of Co-op Forestry, who has managed the Kapal internship program for the agency for years. And it's through her hard work that we were able to, and it was an easy process of convincing Kapal to pursue the PLC agreement. Again, it will run identical to Haku, Thurgood Marshall, and that it is a PLC agreement. So we'll typically are sponsoring 9 students. There is no cost, again, to the units for this program either. We can share a little bit more about the process for sponsoring a student from any one of these 5 programs. Currently in civil rights, we have a pretty thorough selection process where units submit a proposal to the civil rights staff indicating which program they'd like to have a student from. We take into consideration, you know, the geographically that it's dispersed through all regions, station, and area, but really look for some really strong proposals that provide students a robust experience in any one of our MCOs to then provide them that opportunity to compete for full-time employment further down the road. And with that, I'll stop if there's any questions. I know I shared a lot of information with you.
Thank you, Berlinda.
Sure.
And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. And like I said, we will be opening it up after the presentations for a conversation. But I do want you to take another poll because we want to hear from you about which programs have you worked with to deliver workforce development partnerships. Now that you've had a chance to learn a little bit about which programs are included in the WDP Service Hub, please fill out the poll for us. Curious to see who comes out on top. And I'm willing to make a wager where I know which one, but I won't say. So it looks like, yeah, and I think my wager would have been correct. Ironically, the newest program is the program that most of you have worked with the most, and that is the Resource Assistance Program. That's very interesting. I think that we have some work to do with our student internships, of course, and Job Corps. And I think also glad to see, there's 22% of you have been working with the 21 CSC partnerships. And yes, of course, Indian Youth Service Corps, we're just getting started. So realize that there would probably not be any responses to that. But Sylvia, I think that you will have to, we'll have to give you the prize here. Thank you for taking that poll. Much appreciated. Next slide, please. So, so I know that you're wondering, well, many of us are already doing some of this work in the field, and why do we need this structure, this new layer? Well, because of much of the work that you have already done in the field, we're learning from you. And as we really looked at how considered, the priorities of the agency around DEIA, our needs regarding building our capacity to get more work done, because we're not going to get any of this work done with by just hiring people. Because when you think about the billions of dollars that have come to the agency, and just in the past, I would say 5 months, we have before us a mountain that we're going to have to climb if we are going to not only accomplish our mission, but really turn the tide as it relates to how we are protecting our land and adapting in the face of climate change. And we can't get any of that done without helping our partners and helping you expand that engagement with partners. The National Partnership Office, they've been leading out on this work for the last couple of years, trying to build that capacity. And what we realized is that we had a golden opportunity here to begin to build on the work that we are doing with some of our corps and other NGOs who are helping us identify and recruit candidates who have an interest in this work. And it also allowed us to really think about, how can we start to build out our capacity to engage some of those urban organizations that just, aren't available to come out onto the forest lands. So, of course, it builds on your work, and it's going to allow us to increase your capacity to get work done. We must expand opportunities to marginalized communities. And as I shared in the USD with information about the USDA DEIA strategic plan, that is a huge priority, not just for the administration, but for our agency, for all of the USDA agencies, and particularly if we want to conserve public lands legacy for future generations. We want to ensure that we are delivering high quality job training experiences for every single individual that is engaged through these partnerships. And we have to improve accountability and outcomes. We can only do that by being very intentional about what we measure and how we measure it. And then we want to fully leverage the hiring authorities. And I'm going to share a chart shortly about that's showing us beginning to do that work now. And then, of course, um, I think that a lot of these partnerships have functioned in a vacuum where we're not really aligned with our workforce, the agency's workforce planning. Well, we're beginning to do that now as well. So this is why this work is important. Next slide, please. So upcoming shifts and that align with some of the priorities that I just discussed include new reporting requirements. So let me just step back for a moment. Um, it's going to be an adjustment. There are going to be new expectations, and there are going to be new processes and procedures that we are all going to have to learn. But I believe, and I think others are confident, that once we have acclimated and adjusted to some of these changes, that we will all benefit from the results that we will see. So the Resource Assistance Program has provided us with a model where we have been trying out new reporting mechanisms and systems. And this year, we did a soft launch of a VS portal that will allow our partners to directly enter information about workforce development partnerships. Very, very excited about that resource that we will be rolling out broadly with all of our partners who are delivering workforce development experiences in FY23. This will permit them to enter information directly into an application that is connected to our existing VS reports. And it's going to allow us to drill down to an individual level versus the project level where we are currently reporting. 5 of our partners have opted in to help us do the final beta testing of that system this year. And we are nearly at the completion of all of the data that is being reported in FY22 that they are a part of. And we made some changes in FY22 to how you collect information about workforce development partnerships. That is going to allow us to have an interim process to report up certain activities. What's really exciting about this new reporting requirement is that not only the Forest Service is using this system, but Department of Interior has also developed a similar system modeled on what the Forest Service is doing. So we're going to be able to share information and do some comparative analysis across multiple agencies. And our partners in Department of Interior are as excited as us about this opportunity. We also recently we are being more intentional about our planning for this work. And just last Friday, and my apologies for the lateness of that request, but Deputy Chief Chris French and Deputy Chief Antoine Dixon signed off on a communication that provided information about the Workforce Development Partnership Service Hub, you know, the what, the why, and how. But they also asked you to identify your planned efforts around workforce development for all of these programs that we've just talked about for FY23. The deadline in the request is October 15th, which only gave you 30 days upon receipt of the letter. I've already heard from many of you that you will probably need more time. And I expect that we will be sharing an extension of that reporting mechanism soon. We will push that information out as soon as I have confirmation that we can do that. We are looking at our agreements language that is going to that will help us ensure that you all, as you develop agreements, are including information that is going to help our partners be more responsive to our reporting requirements and help us achieve standard levels of engagement. And Michaela Williams, who is on the call, has been helping us along with our Office of Grants and Agreements colleagues to frame up that language, which you will start seeing become available in templates soon. Um, we are already beginning to have greater engagement with research and development, business operations, and state and private forestry, and they are a part of the team that is helping us spread all the good news about what we're trying to do and leverage the engagement of their units and staffs on bringing folks online. And several of those folks are on this call today. So I welcome them, and I welcome this emphasis on cross-deputy integrated approach to how we do this work. And then we want to be able to provide better training for participants and technical assistance for staff and partners overall. Job Corps has been a really wonderful example of what we can do when we are deliberate about preparing participants for the work that is ahead of them. You know, we are the opportunities that present themselves for how individuals can be trained and prepared for the future job market are critical. So we want to work with our field, we want to work with Job Corps and our partners to provide training certifications for as many the types of work that we're doing that will help better prepare young people for the work that is available in this changing world that we are all living through. And that is why one of the positions, a couple of the positions that we're bringing on is with the Workforce Development Service Hub is a training technical assistance provider to help us really collaborate with Job Corps so that we can learn from them and then deliver certifications and trainings to the extent that is helpful to our partners and to you. So there's a lot more coming down the pike about all of these shifts, but I hope that it is at least by introducing them here in this call, we are beginning to prepare you for what's to come. Next slide, please. And so before I pass this off to our colleagues on the National Recruitment and Hiring team, just wanted to share with you a little bit of good news about our hires. You know, we launched the Public Lands Corps Authority for many of our 21 CSC partnerships in 2014. And as you can see, we had 3 hires in 2014. Well, in 2022, and we have not even completed the roll-up of all of the hires. We are, I believe, at about 130 so far. That is super, super exciting. And a lot of this is because the administration's emphasis on providing employment for young people, for reaching diverse audiences, and, you know, for the agencies, you know, doubling down on this work. You know, we've all heard the chief talk about the need for us to be much more focused on developing the next generation of our Forest Service employees, and many of us are like me, you know, planning to retire soon. So there are going to be some big, huge gaps in our workforce, and these programs are an opportunity for us to begin filling some of those gaps. Certainly not all of them, but some of them. So with this information, I want to hand it off to my colleagues on the National Recruitment and Hiring team to talk a little bit about how we are approaching our hiring goals and diversifying our workforce. I believe it's going to be Deb Bagley or Tina Terrell. Tina, welcome.
Hey, Marlene. Hello, everyone. Apologies for being late. to give the leader's intent. Deb Bakery's on my staff, but I wanted to put my voice into the room. I'm at the Society of American Forces Convention, which is going great. We brought 850 positions, everyone, to this convention. So let me start with great job, team. And I mean team of capital T, capital E, capital A, capital M. And you probably have seen that acronym of Together Everyone Achieves More. And I start that way because of what it took over years to get us to this place. And it was an endeavor that started almost 15 years ago that was dealing with what Marlene has taken a lead on, which is great. Thank you, Marlene. Which is we have a lot of programs in the agency and programs with a capital P, which means there's a program manager. But we also have a number of programs with a small little p, and the chief of the Forest Service, Randy Moore, calls them orphan programs. And the reason they're orphan programs is we establish them, we get the authority from Congress, and yet there's no program manager, but yet there's a need for it. And we put it together in the field, may know about it, may not know about it. Most people don't know. I'm looking at the survey questions, but it still is an important program. And the reason I give that history is because we are now in a great place of merging what the agency has implemented for decades, which is we put young people to work. We've been doing it for decades, literally. Way back when the Civilian Conservation Corps were established, way back in the 1930s. Those were young people. So we're very good about that, put people to work. We also, for decades, have utilized bringing young people into the system and converting them. That was the previous co-op program that came into the agency. Our current chief came under the co-op program. A number of our deputy chiefs came into the agency under the co-op program. That then morphed into the STEP program, Student Conservation Experience Program, and then the STEP program, Student Conservation Employment Program, Student Temporary Employment Program. Then we implemented pathways. So that was our young connection of training, education, then employment. That's our second. Our third one was internships, and Belinda gave a great connection of we've always had these internships where we bring young people on, and they do work for us, and it's great. It's mostly in the summertime, but we do have some that come virtual, and then they leave the agency. They just work for a period of time. And now we have the workforce development, and really it's a focus on, as a federal employee and a federal manager, yes, it's important that we get people to work. And yes, it's important we get the work done. But we really wanted to be where they don't just come into the agency and work, they actually come into the agency and take a position. It's back really to the co-op program, but expanding it and utilizing the authorities we've had for decades, which we lost with pathways, but we got back with the 1990 Historic Black Colleges program, or 1890 schools, and then the 1994 tribal schools. So what you're getting is a collage of all the different youth engagement programs that leads to a connecting the young person to what we do in the agency, getting them to work on a unit, and then getting them placed. So that way, each one of us, whether we're going to retire in 5 years, as Marlene says, or maybe 6 or 7, or me, or 10 or 15 years, that we actually reach back and bring in our new citizen stewards of tomorrow, our new leaders of tomorrow, and we help them to connect them to where we are today. That is the whole reason for putting this endeavor on. It took a while, I will say. The letters did get signed, and if you haven't seen it, please, if you know how to go into Mercury, find it, or we can send it out again. But that letter was very important to lay the foundation of where the agency is now, which is workforce development, and that's why it's called the Workforce Service Hubs. I will end my leader's intent, which is everyone, please submit the information that was requested on where your region can go or forest can go. And the reason is because that helps us do the workforce planning of how many of the positions we are now looking at advertising that we should say, you know what, maybe we could do that position not as a 9-11-12, maybe we could do a 5-7 9-11-12, which we can do 5 grades. Or maybe we need to bring on a unit, as I've discussed when I was in NFS, that we actually brought on 4 1890 scholars this summer. And there are about 12 staffs in NFS, which means the other 8 are ready to go next year for an 1890 scholars, not just an 1890 scholar. And even though that scholar that may come on is not going to be converted in a year or two, but maybe 3 or 4, it's putting the foundation of where an organization should be, not could be, should be, to meet the needs of the present. And the needs of the present fall into 3 areas the chiefs talked about. The 10-year wildfire crisis strategy. We need to address how we restore these lands that are entrusted in our care, whether it's national forest or private land that have been devastated by natural disasters. Fires is one, but also hurricanes. If you're not watching TV, you're seeing that Puerto Rico is being devastated, which may be in more worse conditions, I hate to say that, than what occurred 5 years ago with Hurricane Maria. So that's the second one, is restoration is a big key of what we do. And then the third is climate. Climate is affecting us whether you're in a rural area or an urban area. Climate is affecting us whether you're in a high mountain desert or you're in an area with a lot of mountains. Climate is affecting us whether you're along the shorelines or whether you're inland. And so how do we address climate for a huge number of people who are still coming to these beautiful areas we call America? That is why we need the workforce to manage the lands that are entrusted in our care. So each one of you, please think about how you can be engaged in this process, whether you want to be part of the recruitment team that I am leading, or you want to be part of the hiring procedures that we're identifying by the regions, or you want to be a part of the communication strategy for the equity action plan, or you just want to continue to do what you're doing, which is fine, take care of the lands that have been decimated in many places. We want your voice into the room. We need your input into this process, and we appreciate you standing up, stepping out to lead in what the agency has put out there regarding this is who we are and our 5 values. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your attention. And thank you for being part of the Forest Service. I'll turn it back to you, Marlene, or Deb, if she wants to put her voice into the room.
Okay. So I don't see Deb coming on camera. Fine. Great. So this is bringing us to our final poll. And what we want to hear from you is which programs are you most interested in learning more about? Feel free to select, I think maybe, can you select more than one or two? And then while you're doing that, I want to share with you the upcoming webinars that you can join. And on Thursday, the 29th and Thursday, 29th of September, and then Thursday, 11/3, we will be hosting a webinar just about the Resource Assistance Program. Please put it on your calendar and join if one of those sessions if you're interested in learning more. And it looks like lots of interest in all of these programs. I'd love to see the interest. I love seeing the interest in the Indian Service Corps because I'm super excited about that program as well. And then the internships. Good news, Berlinda, maybe some ways that we can work with the field to bring on even more of those student interns. And then on the October 13th, in just a few weeks, we will be hosting a webinar just about the Public Lands Corps. And then Berlinda will be bringing you a great deal more information about student and minority serving institution internships in November on the 17th. So invite you to join one of those. I'm going to stop talking, and I do want to say thank you for being here. This is the first time we've had it to unveil this work in a conversation with our staff. And I'm really interested in hearing from you all, your input, feedback, anything that you like to put into the room at this point. Because like I said earlier, this is all about growing and learning together. And many of you have been doing this work for many years. So if there are any hands, and if anyone wants to just put their voice in the room, presenters, otherwise, anyone, please feel
We have
free.
a question in the chat box from Kari. Kari Carey I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. If you would like to come on the mic and ask your question, or I can ask it for you.
Yeah. Excuse me, it is Kari. And so you got it right. Thank you. So I just had a question on the reply due piece that came out with this, with the links to these webinars, which are awesome. I'm really glad you guys are doing this. There's a survey link in there, and I was curious if the intention was for each forest to kind of answer that survey assessment, or are you guys wanting it back, with just one regional response? I guess that was my only question.
Thank you, Kari. We sent, the letter was directed by the deputy chiefs to agency leadership. And because of that approach, it really is up to the regional station area and other leaders responsible for those units to make that decision. There is an option, that units can submit it directly, but I would defer to your regional leadership about how best to do that. And their
Okay.
preference.
Perfect. Thank you.
More info about all programs needs to be distributed. Currently, it does not filter down to local units where critical hiring needs exist. Thank you, Marin, for that comment. I certainly understand, and I see we have someone on screen, but Marin, I couldn't agree more, and we are building out a PDL for the WDP. There is so much work that needs to be done, but and one of the positions that we're bringing on is just around outreach and communications. So I think that once we have some folks in place and resources made available to us, you'll see a lot more information filtering down. Scott.
Hi, Marlene, and thank you so much for putting this webinar on. We certainly appreciate that here in Region 9. And thank you, Tina and Sylvia, and all that are really bringing this forward. Certainly well needed. I'm kind of new in this position here in Region 9, and over the past several years, one of the things that I've heard are all these disparate types of activities going on, some at local levels, some at regional levels, some are trying to be done nationally. And so this umbrella or this hub is a great idea, because now we really can start to focus on and scaling up some of these opportunities that we have. And I know that I've already communicated with you and Deb on this survey and the data collection piece. I think it's great. My one hope is how do we manage that data and be able to utilize it at that regional or local level? And the idea here is I would love to see this as our tracking mechanism. This is our action plan, right? So, I mean, there's pieces in here. What are we doing right now, and what could we do? So what I would love to be able to do here for Region 9 is to start to say, hey, here's a subset of our information, and now can I add in some additional tracking mechanisms to show how are we implementing, how are we producing, and then what are those achievements? I'm assuming you're kind of considering all that, but I know right off the bat, I really would love to see those portions of this data set that we can get to help us out.
Thank you, Scott. And I'm going to ask Ricardo Martinez if he's still on the call to turn on his camera. He helped us develop this survey. One of the positions that we are hiring is a data analytics person. That's going to really help us drill down into information. Ricardo, is there anything that you could share with Scott in response to his recommendation, which I totally endorse?
Yeah, same endorse. I think one of the goals of having this hub come together is really to further the way we use data to support our efforts across the agency. And I think this was a first off attempt to serve a specific purpose, to collect responses from the field. And I think as we're able to onboard specifically that data person, certainly thinking about being able to put that into a more sophisticated framework, such as like an Esri database, to be able to story map some of that stuff and be able to share data in ways, in collaboration with all of you, to be able to speak to your needs as well as the needs of being able to report well to upwards within the agency and to the department exactly the value that's being produced by these programs. I think is a goal that's at the forefront of our minds.
Great. Appreciate hearing that. Let me, I'm here to support, test, beta test, whatever I can do. And certainly if that Excel data or that spreadsheet data is available at some point after we submit our Region 9, just getting an export of that, and I can maintain it externally until we see that further evolvement of how this data set looks. But thank you very much for that, Ricardo. And thank you again, Marlene, for bringing this forward.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thanks, Ricardo. So we still have some time, and I don't want to rush anyone. Again, encourage people to speak up, share, tell us what you need, tell us what doesn't work, and that you don't want to see any more of. And yeah, because it's something. I mean, it's really important that we hear from you all about your experiences, because there's much to learn. And as Lily noted, yeah, these are exciting times for the Forest Service. And I'll just share briefly, when I first joined the Forest Service, I guess it was about 10 years ago, and started learning about how we delivered this work. And I probably cut off my legs when I said this, but it just all seems so schizophrenic, the way we were delivering these programs. The right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. There were no basic standards of engagement and expectations. There was a lot happening, and we probably weren't collecting all of the good things that were happening in the Forest Service. And so, as Tina noted, this work, this efforts initially started, 15 years ago? And the stars have finally aligned for us to actually try to build something that's going to help us serve all of our customers better, our field, our partners, and especially the individuals and constituents who come through these programs. So it is indeed very exciting times to be a part of the organization, and especially if this is the kind of work that is meaningful for you. So just a little story. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Marlene. This is fantastic. I'm learning so much. And the point that you just made about working across deputy areas and different programs, as you may know, when I'm not acting as the volunteer coordinator and workforce development program manager in Region 6, I work as a grants management specialist. And putting on that cap, I'm kind of thinking of some of the work that we do and where it might be really advantageous, if the thought isn't already there, to do some cross-training with the grants and agreements directorates throughout the agency, so that we are understanding how these hiring authorities work and how some of these different programs and the agreements could be or should be written when we're thinking about the responsibilities of our partners, as well as the staff responsibilities, and just better understanding these programs, knowing that really it's the agreements that formalize this great work that's happening. So just an idea that popped in my mind as you were talking about cross deputy areas and how we can, again, to better spread the knowledge and understanding of all these great opportunities.
Thank you, Christine. I couldn't agree more. And I think that there's going to be some opportunities with the joint, even though it's been postponed, the joint National Partnership Office and OGA training next spring. So I'll make sure that I bring that up to the organizers and planners.
Fantastic. Again, thanks for all that you all are doing. This is fantastic to see this come to fruition.
So there are a number of thanks, Kathy. I endorse that as well. Kathy Mick. Kathy, Region 5 and Region 8 and others have been doing some really innovative work around workforce development. And I don't know, Kathy, if you're willing to come on screen for a minute just to share a little bit about the Region 5's approach. And if there's anyone from Region 8, to talk a little bit about what they're doing there as well. And anyone else who wants to share some of the best practices and models that they've implemented in recent months, years. And forgive me if I put you on the spot.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. Just, I mean, I'm really glad that Christine brought that up because I know as of recently it's not a indictment of GNA at all. GNA has been doing everything they can to be supportive, and we've had a wonderful GNA in Region 5, but we lost a lot of our expertise through retirement. And so there are a lot of new GNA people. I think there's like 13 or 15 GNA people in Region 5 that are training. And so what has happened is we have had, some people move up and new people come in, but not, and there's so much, there's so many different types of agreements that not everyone understands the authorities and the unique pieces of us working with either like universities or some of the core crews or other partners to deliver some of this work. And so, we've always been able to sort issues out, but then that takes time, and that's something that we're all short of these days is time. So really just having more collaboration up front and trying to all be on the same page, before the instrument is submitted for execution is a great idea. And so I know that so I saw the email for the summit that it was postponed until later in 2023, but I think if there could be a particular segment on these different authorities as we use them for a lot of the youth and workforce development programs, that would be, really helpful. Because in, Region 5, much like in Region 8, we work a lot with our partners. We're doing a lot of work with the universities. And so the type of work we're doing, and we're seeing more of this, is that as young people are wanting to get experience in the job market while they're going to school. And so obviously if you're going to school for a particular discipline, you'd like to get training in that discipline so that you can build your resume for when you graduate and be competitive for some of these other programs that we offer. And so we're seeing a lot of interest from the universities or the foundations that work directly with the university to work directly and hire students. And so it's easier to the foundations are typically nonprofits, and so it's usually easier to have an agreement with the foundation than directly with the university, although that works as well. And so we're seeing the universities want to give students curriculum credit, and then also allow them on the other side to have a part-time or full-time job, depending on what it is, to get this work experience. And so sometimes it's paid or stipend based, and sometimes it's not. And so it starts to get tricky as to how it's presented. And so I think the more that we can work together to collaborate with DNA, that would be really helpful, because we're seeing a lot of interest from the universities, and particularly the community colleges, in wanting to deliver experiential education to the students. In California, we have a big push right now with our governor doing a forest resiliency program, billions of dollars. And so there's a joint task force that our regional forester is a part of, and there's a sub task force that's looking specifically at workforce development in the forestry realm, and that's pretty broad because it's not just hard forestry, but it's hazardous fuels, it's restoration, climate. It's a lot of those things, you know, that we've talked about in the Forest Service. And you know, the climate work is pretty broad, broad reaching, you know, when you're talking about climate, and then also restoration or resilience from fire, or restoration from fire. And of course, everyone's aware of the fires we've had here in the West, and you know, continue to have, even though we're almost in October. And so the I think the service hub is going to be very beneficial to um, stand back up some of those programs like 1890s and haiku and some of the others that we used to take advantage of that we haven't so much. And then also just you know, working with all of our different, some of the same partners, but also different partners to um, really deliver some of these programs. So yeah, pretty exciting stuff. But I think the more we can do to figure out how to work directly with the universities and community colleges to get you know, to get students out there to do work, the better. I'll give a real quick example, and then I'll let somebody else put their voice in the room. But you know, we have a was California State University Humboldt up in the North Coast, and Merlene, you remember your trip to the Six Rivers, but it's now called you know, Cal Poly Humboldt. They've become a Cal Polytechnic school, but we've had a great opportunity with them. So they have a cultural heritage program at the university, and so it's been really cool that we've had an agreement with the university. And so in the summer, they provide us with students that are either, you know, juniors going into their senior year or sophomores going into their junior year. They work directly with a Forest Service person on the unit, and then also a mentor from the university. And so these young people are going out and doing cultural heritage surveys, which for us has been a you know, a barrier for getting some NEPA project work done to have the heritage, you know, because we just don't have enough archaeologists. And so it's been really great to have these students going out and doing the cultural heritage work to get some of our projects, you know, through that through the NEPA process. So that's kind of one of the examples that I can give of stuff that we're trying to do that's innovative, that really gives the students that hands-on, that's part of their curriculum that they're getting a degree for. They're getting a little they're getting paid, but then on the other side, we're creating a partnership and then getting work done, and they're getting a nice piece to put on their resume. And then also it's allowing them to step into that next pipeline, like the resource assistant program or other programs when they graduate. So anyway, thanks, Merlene. You're on mute, Merlene.
Oh, so sorry. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, Kathy. And yeah, I'm really interested in the community colleges connection, because I think that that's an untapped resource that we haven't begun to even align with. So thank you for sharing that. I see Tina has her hand up.
Thanks, Marlene. A couple of other points that I was looking in the chat. One area that I would put in front of everyone, because it is still an important one, is just not dealing with the restoration. Another priority in NFS is recreation. We are land people for a reason, and we're natural resources people because it's about the land. But recreation is an extremely important priority, and it covers everything about recreation. And I put that into the room because it's in our equity action plan, if you have not read it, which is access to recreation. That deals with our permits when we say access. It's not necessarily, oh, is this gate open or is this road open? It's really access to people, connecting them to the land and where they want to enjoy. So that's just another particular important one. It's also in our Justice 40 action plan or implementation plan. The question I wanted to hit to is a little bit of what Kathy was talking about. We have a great opportunity, and we will get some webinars scheduled with grants and agreements, because agreements with universities are really different, everyone, than agreement with a partner. And I would say we need to do more of those. And the reason is this. We talk a lot about the internships, which is important. I'm totally for it. But the university is where you develop the relationship that exceeds the time period for that intern. It's a lot like dealing with partners. And universities are highly interested because that means it's long-term commitment versus here's a student, you get them for 3 or 4 years and they leave. Second reason universities are interested in it is because they're looking at the student we may get or bring goes into grad school. And universities are highly interested in more than just that undergraduate, grad school. The third reason they like these, they're called capacity building agreements, is because you do more with the university on what you're interested in, which is more than just a student, but also deals with training, as well as it deals with those students can do research projects. So that's why agreements with universities, they're a lot harder to do, but they are extremely important for the universities. And we will be doing a lot more agreements with the universities, including community college. The last thing I wanted to put in the room was about ACES. ACES is part of my portfolio. I am now the senior executive for recruitment, and ACES has come with me from NFS to BizOps. And the reason that I requested ACES come with me is because someone put in the chat, we want to connect young people, but the great opportunity is to connect to someone who's 55 and older. I will say it does not have to be a Forest Service employee. People keep thinking that. It does not. The legislation does not say federal employment. It doesn't even say Forest Service. It says someone who's connected to conservation and they're 55 and older. Great opportunity for us to ping people who have retired from wherever and can come into the agency to provide that expertise for a lot of these young people we're bringing on board. So we are working with a couple of the two big partners so we can develop these big, huge, you think about it as like an IDIQ contract. Well, it would be like an IDIQ agreement with the partner, and then the unit that wants an enrollee will identify the type of work, and we fund it from the Washington office. We haven't done it yet. We're trying to get it started with $1 million. But yes, we want to have ACES as part of this. But ACES is a big program with P. There's a program manager, Lily Nevis, and it's more to connect the older generation with the younger generation. And so it will be part of my portfolio, and I am already engaged with Merlene and the Workforce Diversity Hubs where we can align that connection. But thank you for that comment. Thanks, Merlene.
Thank you, Tina. So I don't see, yeah, it is more than about professionals. And we try to illustrate that through some of the photos that it's about those jobs, GS3 and up. But it also includes some of those professionals that we don't always think that our partners can bring to us, which they can, and it's been demonstrated through the Resource Assistance Program. Many of those RAs have qualified for GS9, and we've had a couple who've also been eligible for GS 12, 13 slots. So just to know that these programs is the range. And that means that we have creative and diverse ways to engage with partners and opportunities. So I don't see any more comments, questions in the chat. I don't want to hold you. I want to just thank you all for joining us. This is the one of the first of 5 webinars. You have the schedule. We'll be pushing that out more. We may even do a repeat of this webinar because I think that we need to figure out how to be much more, do better communicating these opportunities and experiences, because I suspect there are a lot more people who want to know about this work. So, and it looks like Gary just came online, my boss. Hello, Gary.
No, I didn't just come online. I've been sitting in the background because I know you're doing such a wonderful job. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has helped to support you to try to get this program in the right direction. I want to say thank you to Tina because I think you've been a champion throughout for the underdog, which is the students and the marginalized communities and the people who need to be part of the workforce. And I just want to thank Ricardo because you are the person who's making things happen behind the scenes, and Sylvia, all the folks who are really championing making the Forest Service a better place. It doesn't happen if these folks don't do their job. It doesn't happen if they don't care about this. It's not, actually, let me take that back. It's not a job to them. It is their passion. Tina talks about this even when we're not at work. So I know it's her passion. So we have to keep our finger on the gas. Anytime that you have an opportunity to tell people about this program, talk about different hiring mechanisms, talk about getting students involved, talking about getting, indigenous communities and marginalized communities involved in the agency, we have to do it. We want to work ourselves out of a job. That is the goal. The goal is for everybody to win and for us to work ourselves out of jobs. And we do that by hiring good people, reaching out to the folks that most need it. So I just want to thank you, Merlene. It is always, I love listening to you talk. And Tina, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's it. And I'm in the office for real. Like, this is a real door. I'm in the office.
Yeah, you're trying to put the rest of us to shame, Gary, for not being in the office, huh? Thanks for
No, the
joining
chief
us.
called me out. The chief said he doesn't see me enough. So I had to come. When the chief calls you out by name, you got to come to work more. So I need to come to work.
Very cool. Again, thank you all, and looking forward to working with y'all and doing some things differently. And encourage you to be innovative, share your ideas, and I think that together we can certainly make a difference. So much thanks. Thanks to the team for helping pull this together: Latasha, Wanika, Carly O'Connor, Lady Reyes, and everyone who reviewed it. Nothing gets done by one person on this team, so much appreciate them all. With that, I'll say goodbye. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and look forward to seeing you on the webinar next week about resource assistance. Take care.